Thank you for joining us for this ACM Hangout session hosted by Arts Council Malta. Today we are going to be discussing the link between therapy and the arts. Here are some more details. The human experience and the arts are intrinsically connected. Throughout the years, research has shown that engaging and participating in artistic projects and activities can be highly beneficial, increasing self-worth and well-being. In this session, we will be exploring the connection between art and therapy and the therapeutic value of art, while shedding some light on past and ongoing projects focusing on this particular area of research. Joining us for this first part of today's session are Pamela Baldacchino, visual artist and curator, welcome, and Betsy Katkuti, dance artist. Thank you, thanks for joining us and welcome to this session. As practitioners, you are both interested in merging the fields of therapy and the arts. Why this interest, and how do you see this link and the potential in this particular link between the two fields? Pamela?
Originally, I became interested in this field because I'm also a nurse. So automatically, I always looked to see how we can apply art and visual art, to be specific, to the hospital environment. So I started researching in it, and I started working with digital art, more specifically, creating little films that were a metaphor of the self going through the illness journey. And at some point, after I had worked consistently in it, I wanted, of course, to apply it to hospital. And I was invited by Dr. Bennett Chase, who is the principal psycho-oncologist at SAMOC, and she asked me whether I would be interested in working with her and using the art that I had created as part of her therapy sessions. So basically art as a tool to sustain professionals in their work. From there, I got a fund through Valletta 18, and I was supported in working for 3 whole years in SAMOC. And over there, I started to realize the value of therapy and arts when they are combined. And what started off as a passion on my part, through dialogue with staff, with patients, slowly developed, and I started to research it. And research the meaning that it generates and why it is important. It is important because we are aesthetic beings. So the moment we go into hospital and we have been diagnosed with a chronic illness or an illness like cancer, where our world changes upside down, we don't stop in being ourselves, and we don't just become a patient. So being in hospital and maybe being in a room that's very clinical, white, and does not welcome you on a human level, so the environment would be very bare, maybe machines that add to stress, shows one the importance of creating an environment that is holding and supporting. So when you have not only the physical environment that supports you as an aesthetic being, but also having the presence of staff who are there for you, who talk to you, who support you through that relation. Together, these, they contain the person. So the person is like held in a web of containment, the environment and the staff together that are there to help you go through your illness journey.
Yes, so this would be what you, I think, refer to as the therapeutic space?
The therapeutic, yes, aspect of art and care, the aesthetics of care.
Yes.
And the value is there because we want to create meaning. So when we are going through illness, we do not stop creating meaning in our lives. And even when we are faced with the trauma of illness and hospitalization, we still need to create meaning and to find ourselves in whatever we are going through and to be supported. Obviously, there are the stages of grief, there are stages that we need to go through, but it makes all the difference if you are in an environment that is comforting and that
Yes.
is, you know, it's not a harsh environment, that it just looks after your physical health, but also your spiritual health, your emotional health.
And through this project, you did notice a difference in
Yes, and how? We
people.
did, for example, we did a lot of workshops using the different senses,
Okay.
movement, visual art, music,
Mm-hmm.
oils and smells. And together with Dr. Chase, who supported the patients, we allowed the person to speak in another language. So if, for example, I am going through illness and I would like to share my experience, but I don't even know how to word it,
Yes.
maybe through movement, maybe through a particular scent that, you know, triggers off something in me, I then would be able to share that emotion, that feeling that is coming out, be it a fear, be it an anxiety, be it something that happened to me in the past and with the illness came out again.
Yes.
So the value of nature, for example, as well, came out a lot. That we are still part of nature, and as nature goes through cycles, so do we as
The human
humans go
body.
through cycles.
Exactly.
So when we acknowledge that, we are in a way on this journey ourselves, and that at the end goal is our acceptance and our surrender to our illness journey, come what may, because at times it's not always, the illness journey doesn't always lead to you going back home, but it might lead to death.
Exactly.
And surrender also to whatever you are experiencing in life, be it recovering, be it being moving on.
Yeah. Patsy, what is your story and what is your how did you see this potential in the link between art and therapy in your case and in your field?
I think in my case it was a little bit more, what instigated this link for me, I think, was a bit more personal in that I found that I used to find, especially when I was younger, I found it difficult to express myself through words.
Okay.
But I felt it much easier to express myself through movement. So for me, it was a bit of a self-discovery
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. And through movement, I discovered there were maybe particular issues that I would like to work on, for example, and mainly to do with stress or anxiety, as you very well mentioned. So that, I think, was my first kind of instigation. When after a few years, basically, I also wrote my dissertation on the link, basically, between the importance of movement and psychosomatic conditions. So that was my most keen interest, in a way.
Mm-hmm. Hence the project which you are working on now, right? So there's
Yes.
this link.
So the project that we're working on now is all based on being mindful and mindful movement. So I'll be working with a psychologist from Therapy Works, who's an expert in mindfulness. And through her guidance, I would be giving sessions on mindful movement, more on a somatic kind of movement.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you both referred to specific projects which you are involved in and how this started off. But kind of when you see the value behind merging these two fields, you wonder why this is not taken up more often, no? Because it doesn't really characterize the work at the moment. It's just you hear of projects here and there, but
Yes.
perhaps there are these different affairs, but not one effort in the sense. Why do you think that this is the case? Why do artists perhaps not take up this particular study or make this link more often?
In my case, I work with the government, and there needs to be a role, a predetermined role that you can apply for, and through a series of interviews, you get chosen for it. Now, in my case, I would need to apply for a role that would be curator of the hospital environment, which presently is not there. There is no such role.
Okay.
So through the project, I was able to curate the environment for a few years. But the moment that the project ran out, because I had to stop because it was no longer funded, I still kept on doing it voluntary for a while. But then obviously
There's so much you
I
can
would have
do.
loved to be able to work on it full time.
Yes.
But I couldn't because there was no such role. And then you start having to rely on funds. But you come to a point, and we were talking about this before, we were waiting outside, that you get tired. How many times are you going to apply for funds and struggle, you know, to be able to do the work you are passionate about?
Yes.
And also you have to sustain yourself. So it ends up, you have a full-time job, which has probably nothing to do with, with what you do, with what you would love to do.
Exactly.
And so the time is very limited as to how much you can dedicate in the pursuit of such of this practice.
Yes, 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 yes. So you are referring to perhaps having the opportunity to have more long-term support rather than this being tackled on a project-by-project basis.
Exactly.
Right?
It could. I would have it as a job. Like you have a museum curator, you have a hospital curator. Actually, I mean, there is just the same sort of value as to having a museum curator, having a hospital curator.
Yes.
But I think that's exactly it, that there isn't this awareness yet that it is as important as any other job. So kind of, as you're saying, you know, yes, you feel really passionate about it, you apply for funds, you do the project, but then once the time frame is over, that's it.
Yes.
The pity is that although there are it's not only us doing these kinds of projects, there are many other people doing these forms of outreach projects, this awareness is still not as evident as we'd like it to be, in a sense, not as prominent as we'd like it to be. Although, I've done projects even in the juvenile prison, for example, which, although you tell me about how is it therapeutic, I think it's very therapeutic because we did some sessions, for example, to deal with their next step in life. That's part of therapy, I think, as well, you know, how to support each other. But again, it's as you're saying, it would be great if there was this particular role, kind of that, even if it's, you can't do it for everything, but as you said, in the hospital, it would be fantastic if there was this particular role to carry out these kinds of workshops to help with therapy. Of course, we can't eliminate therapy, in my opinion, but I think it's a great addition to it.
It's a tool.
Exactly.
It's a tool, actually, for therapists, because when I was working at SAMOC, I had a lot of these discussions and, you know, reaching out, maybe we do this and we do that, or they would tell me, okay, can you come to our ward? And then we'll have a design workshop, we see what they would like, I liaise with other artists, we bring in artwork, we have workshops. So you can see how even the staff enjoy and would want to have the presence of a hospital curator.
However, projects in this particular context are interrupted, so that is creating...
Yes, because a project has a time frame in the nature of a project. So we have to go beyond the project now and creating a role that you have, you know, a job. You are like a teacher, you're a curator. In our case, since it's a therapeutic, we can either have a curator in a hospital, or else we can have, as we were saying, a museum or some other space.
Yes.
But there is need.
But still, there are stumbling blocks, there are challenges, and what do you think could be possible solutions? I mean, we mentioned funds, okay, but I think this, in order to create this type of awareness that these projects are effective, that they are changing people, that they are changing environments, perhaps we need to put this on someone's agenda. So how can that be effectively done, in your opinion? I know you have ideas. Come on.
Go for it.
As you said, I think there are many ways we could do it, but I think the best thing would be is I mean, if we could show, if we can prove like there is some kind of results as well in it, so through dissemination, through results gathered from these projects. But then again, how do we bring awareness with it? You know, who do we take it to? What is that body we need to take it to prove that this would be an ideal role to create right now? I mean, I think one of the best examples I can give is Step Up for Parkinson's, for example. I'm part of that team as well, and I mean, I haven't been there for too long, but I think I've been there now around 3 years already. And you can see, I mean, besides the physical benefits of movement, especially for that particular condition, it's also the idea of coming together, that social atmosphere, being, knowing that you're not alone. You know, and again, this goes back to, and then reducing stress levels and anxiety of, you know, something new that's overcome your body. So that is a perfect example, I think, one of them, you know. Creates awareness.
We can, even online, like to having a digital platform where you can have artists who are specialized in therapy, in you know, bringing together arts and therapy through their own particular medium, and through arts, say arts on prescription, liaising with staff, whether doctors, nurses, social workers, physiotherapists, and creating the possibility of having arts as prescription within the community. Or, for example, after being discharged from hospital, how do you, all right, you've been, for example, through cancer, you've had your treatment, and now you're going back to your normal life. But how normal is life after radiotherapy, chemotherapy?
Exactly.
Why don't we use arts to create that buffer zone where the ex-patient now, through arts, would be able still to keep in touch with hospital, with support using different, like, dance, movement. So yes, there is also the digital platform, but someone needs to set it up. Maybe the Arts Council.
Go back to the Arts Council. Yes, but it is an appeal to whoever can.
Yes, to have, you can even a team, you know.
Yes,
a few individuals who look at the physical environment, look at the digital environment, and seeing how we could create this sort of support network.
What is interesting is that this particular area of study is also being included in the Arts Council strategy. So we hope that there are that it will be taken forward, and perhaps these ideas can be taken up. I'd like to thank you, Pamela.
Thank you so much.
Betsy, for joining us for this session. And we are back with Dr. Tyron Grima, lecturer and theatre practitioner. Thank you, Tyron, very much for joining us. So why does the connection between art and human experience lead to art being a channel to enhance self-expression, to enhance coping skills, etc.?
I think we need to understand such a question on two levels. You know, there is the self-expression from the actors, from the performers, from the artist's point of view. But there is also what is being received from the other end, the spectator. So if we have to focus on performance, in fact, and especially if we have to go through the different historical phases, art has been used numerous times as a vehicle for self-expression, sometimes even with a particular intent, and sometimes even misused perhaps as well. And this is because in reality, art is tapping into the deep experiences of the human nature, of human reality. And if we're talking about theatre or the world of performing arts, it is embodying them. Obviously, then other art forms have their own channels and their own media of doing so. And furthermore, this is being developed and expressed by the individual, the artist or the artists, and fed into the community of spectators that are watching that, and that automatically leaves an impact. So yes, of course, art has always been a very, very strong, I would dare say, spiritual vehicle that has led to humanity, human beings exploring very deep aspects of their own being.
Yes, but is actually happening, when you are, from an audience perspective this time around. So when you are watching something which you perhaps identify with, which you relate with in some way or another. So what is happening there? What's the therapeutic value on
And
that
that's
level?
a very difficult question to answer,
I
because in
know.
reality, we go back to Aristotle with his whole
Exactly.
theory of catharsis, and then the other extreme, Brecht and alienation. The truth is, we're not going to go into theories, that's not the point here, I guess, but the truth is that this has always been a preoccupation, something that has always led many practitioners, many artists to ask the question, what exactly, you actually phrased it in a very, very interesting way, what exactly happens? And truth being said, I don't think there is an answer to that. We can't really say what happens exactly. But what certainly happens is something very powerful that we may not always be able to understand. And that is why art has a therapeutic element in it. I'll go a step back. Before actually saying that art can be therapeutic, we need to start with what was being said before, that art leaves an impact. There's this engagement that happens between the artist and the viewer, the spectator, the person watching or engaging with the work of art. And this leaves an impact, which obviously is very multifaceted, because each person reacts to an art form in different ways. I mean, goodness knows how many times I watch a play which I like or dislike, and my husband, for example, likes it, has an opposite feeling, or I speak to other friends, and because obviously art impacts us in different ways.
It's a very subjective.
It's very subjective, and I think it's very here and now as well.
Yes.
To the extent that I might watch a piece today and it leaves me totally cold and indifferent. And this does not necessarily reflect on the quality of the work. I might watch it the weekend after, a year after. Obviously, it's different, especially with performance. You never capture the same performance twice. But even if we had to, let's take film, for example, which is a bit more contained, it leaves different impact. The impact will change according to wherever I am in my own journey.
Exactly.
So yes, there's that impact, and it could be therapeutic, and very often it is.
It is. Yes. I was recently very interested in a particular. Well, it took the form of a stunt, but in reality, it had a very interesting effect on people. Where Stromae, the Belgian singer, did this act on TV where he launched one of his songs that actually spoke about the very difficult subject of suicide and mental health awareness, and it did create an impact there. So there was actually noticed that quite a number of people, after watching that particular performance, sought help. So I think it is something which happens or can happen. If you're watching the writing which appeals to you at that particular point, it can affect you.
They're almost talking about a functional aspect of art, that art can serve as a vehicle to raise awareness on a social level, on a political level, on a psychological level. Of course, then there's also the responsibility, though, of the artist, especially when we're tackling issues which are sensitive, possibly controversial, or you've just referred to mental health issues. So there's so much research about it that shows contrary sort of results. So will such engagements actually lead to more awareness? Could they actually be dangerous in the sense that they could actually promote the opposite? Ultimately, yes, the artist, linking back to your first question, needs to express himself or herself, needs to engage in a dialogue with the audience, but there's a very, very strong sense of responsibility, which I think the artist, no matter what topic, theme he or she is tackling, needs to always remember and be ready to carry the weight. This reminds me, this might be a bit controversial, in fact, but when I was doing my doctorate on Simone Weil, and she was speaking about the importance of freedom of expression, even and particularly within the arts. She refers to a novel by André Gide. Not quite sure whether it was, I think it was The Vatican Cellars, I'm not too sure. But anyway, in this novel, there's this episode where the protagonist actually, I hope I'm remembering it right, pushes this old person off the train just for the pleasure of doing so. And Vale says that, of course, she'd had every right to write in such a way. But if ever somebody had to replicate the same action, she would also need to defend himself on a legal level. Of course, perhaps this is a bit of an exaggerated scenario.
Yes.
But what I'm saying is that as artists, we really need to be aware of these dynamics, not to stop us from expressing ourselves, because I think that would be equally wrong, but to do whatever we do in a responsible way, in an ethical manner.
Ethical manner, exactly, because there are ethical implications to also the solutions that are being proposed through the arts, through that particular art. But yes, it's a very difficult subject kind of to tap into. And what happens when an individual then engages directly? So we did kind of mention the artist and the fact that the therapeutic effect can also be ultimately on the artist himself or herself. But what happens when perhaps an audience is invited to engage on a more active level, also in a collective environment as well? What could potentially be the therapeutic value there?
Because we have different levels of engagement, as you've said yourself, and obviously the interactive element can be very strong on a therapeutic level. I don't necessarily say that because something is interactive, the level of therapeutic impact is necessarily stronger. For example, if I have to take my own personal experiences, possibly the performances that left a therapeutic impact on me were more the ones that had less of an interactive element. But besides that,
that allowed perhaps that space for you to think and reflect on what you are.
So it can really work on both ways. No, sometimes you actually need to have that space, that distance, that detachment to allow the therapeutic element to grow, to be nurtured within you. But I think one important element from a therapeutic level of any form of art where the engagement, the interaction is more direct, is the communitarian aspect. Because obviously we grow as individuals, but we also grow within a community. By nature, man is a social animal. No, we work in groups. The intrapersonal is very important, of course, but the interpersonal is equally important. And that's interesting because performance, and here I go back to the performing arts, you have like this parallel process because you have an interpersonal dynamics happening within the performers. Because even if it is a one-person performance, there's always a relationship with the director, with the lighting designer. So theater performance by default is a social event. And then there is the relationship with the audience and the audience members amongst themselves. So when you have something which is happening on an interactive element, this communitarian aspect is reinforced, it is emphasized, and therefore the possibility of therapeutic value is actually also by consequence accentuated.
Thank you very much, Tyron, for sharing some of your insights about the subject. That brings our session to a conclusion. I would like to thank all the participants for joining us today and for sharing their insights and their thoughts about this very important and interesting subject. Feel free to leave any comments in the comment section below. I would like to thank you and see you very soon for another session of the ACM Hangouts.